The school had violated state law with inadequate notice and said as much to school administrators.
Consequently, the middle school canceled Planned Parenthood's appearance, but we are very concerned that Planned Parenthood will be aggressively coming to middle schools, junior highs, all up and down the state of California and even outside of California because of new empowering state legislation that is being pushed and will probably be emulated by other states as well.
Even in this day and age, even if you think you have no chance, Dacus says it is important to speak up and seek help.
We, in fact, are empowering parents all across the nation with opt-out forms that they can download for free, which is a very important step in protecting their children from these kinds of attacks that are taking place against our children in public schools by groups like Planned Parenthood.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Here's Brian Edwards with the latest weather update.
Any showers and severe weather through the nation's heartland this afternoon should diminish quickly by nightfall, and we'll see chilly conditions again for the Northeast, with all the storms in the nation's midsection moving east for Concord and Manchester, New Hampshire, down through Rhode Island and New York City, with temperatures inching up into the low 40s for Newark, New Jersey on Friday, but rebounding to the mid-60s in Raleigh, 75 in Atlanta, and 80 in Jacksonville, although you're all under the gun for rain on Friday as well. We're still looking good in Denver up to Jackson for Friday, but the rain over Portland is creeping eastward for the weekend, with rain down the coast to L.A. into Saturday. High temperatures of 70 degrees there, clear and 70 in Albuquerque for both Friday and Saturday, and along the Gulf Coast, we could see showers again lingering into Saturday and Saturday evening. That's your national weather forecast. I'm Brian Edwards, NBC News Radio.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Pastor D.
The Back to God movement always reminds people that we got to know who we are and whose we are. And we are children of the Most High God. Made in His image and likeness. That's what Genesis 1:26 says. Made in His image and likeness. So that means if Yeshua could walk on water, guess what? We can too.
Each weekday at 4 o'clock Central on Urban Family Talk. And let's get back to God. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
There are people who definitely lied and misled Congress, okay? So if they don't go to prison, we're going to have a two-tier justice department.
Kristen, let's not forget that the people that have been involved in this process, they've wasted 2 years of their life, and they need to find a way to validate it. They've lost in 2016. They lost on the collusion battle, and now they're looking for any and everything they can.
Are these opinion shows or these news programs? Because that's an important distinction. And what people tell me, American people, everywhere I go in this country, that's what they want to know.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. I'm so glad to be with you today. We have a ton of content live and direct to you, and we're going to be getting to all of that here in just a moment. Let me tell you who we have for our guests today. We are going to be chatting with Joel Patrick. You may have seen his picture at the White House or on the Turning Point tours. He's been all over the place doing a ton of really cool content on Instagram specifically, which is where I found him. And he's going to be joining us to talk about the Jussie Smollett thing. Now, his perspective is that of a millennial. He's a young guy. He's also someone who's beating out this mantra that has been taught to all of our kids that the only way to be successful in America is to have a college degree. I actually don't know Joel's educational background, but I know he's a part of the tree trimmers crew. And by that, I mean he owns his own business and he trims trees. Where would we be without that? Well, we'd be similar to the situation in California where a ton of their problems with wildfires are due to them not tending the garden and taking care of what's going on with their tree, not just the population of trees, but trimming them, clearing out underbrush, et cetera, et cetera. So he's an expert at this. And as you know, my husband and I, we have quite a few trees on our property. And it's one of those things where if you find someone good, you have to latch onto them like your life depends on it, because it's very hard to find skilled tradesmen, skilled craftsmen who do a good job, are honest and who will show up and get the job done. And then, you can pay them and have the whole thing complete. So we're going to be talking to Joel in this hour. We're also going to tackle, this is kind of a sore subject with me, and it's the treatment of Black conservative women by leftists everywhere. And I'm not talking about, so I often refer to on the show the hate mail and the things that people send me. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual people in positions of professional authority or members of huge organizations like Google attacking people who are Black, who happen to be women, for being conservatives, accomplished women, people like Kay Coles James. Now, she's been on the program before, and I've never hidden the fact that I think she is impressive, and she's someone that should be emulated by young people everywhere. This isn't about her being Black that we should emulate her, but because she's done so many amazing things in her life, and all from not just the conservative viewpoint, but the Judeo-Christian standpoint. This is a woman who is really a fantastic example of how to live your life. She started out in grade school desegregating her elementary school, and that was tough. But she doesn't have a victim bone in her body. She's never used that as a reason, well, I can't do this or I can't do that because of, things that happened in my child. No, she's just gone on to achieve and accomplish amazing things. She now heads up the Heritage Foundation and a whole gamut of other things. I'm going to get into that in just a minute here. And then we're going to circle around to that story. It's a tragedy, really, about the young woman. She's a college student. She got separated from her friends and decided to take an Uber back to the dorm and got into the vehicle of a murderer. And he murdered her, drove her someplace and murdered her and left her body. And there's a way to avoid this. And so ride-sharing apps, Uber and Lyft and others, there are smaller ride-sharing groups that have cropped up in the wake of the success of Uber. There's a simple fix to that, and it's the classmate of the murdered woman who is actually bringing up this fix. So we're going to get to that in the third segment. And also, the good junior senator from the state of Missouri has stepped out in the wake of the actions against Unplanned, the film. He is calling for an independent audit of Twitter. And so this is not partisan hackery or, liberals will say, he's a Republican and that's why he wants to attack Twitter. Yeah, that's how I think they talk. So, yeah, that's what they would say. But what I would say is Twitter has said repeatedly, Jack Dorsey has said repeatedly that they are a neutral public platform, a platform of ideas, a place where anyone can go and express their First Amendment rights to share their thoughts in 140 characters or more. And so, since that's what they call themselves, and they're not regulated and they get all these breaks tax-wise because of that, then why wouldn't they just let things flash out as they may? And, if Unplanned the film is going to be popular and awesome, let it be popular and awesome. If it's going to bomb, let it bomb. Why do they need to help it along? So we'll see. We'll dig into that in the third segment as well. So right now, let's talk about this Black grandma enraging 1,000 Google lefties. So when I saw the story online, I thought, well, which Black grandma is it? I mean, what do you have to be up to enrage 1,000 people at Google? And then the picture is of Kay Coles James. So I recognize her immediately. I'm like, what in the world has she possibly done? This story starts off with a little bit of background on her. Kay Coles James used to be the director of the Office of Personnel Management, and she oversaw a federal civilian workforce of 1.8 million people. She was responsible for a budget of $650 billion. So she now chairs the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission, and OPM recently celebrated her tenure where she used to work at OPM as a part of Women's History Month, which was last month. Now, she'd also been Virginia's Secretary of Health and Human Resources, I should say. And she sits on 3 corporate boards. That's right now. This is current stuff. She also is a member of NASA's Advisory Council. So remember, if her last name was Clinton, or if she, refused to wear the flag pin and worship Barack Obama, she'd be on television all the time. She'd be on the cover of Time magazine. She'd be on the cover of, Newsweek and Vogue, and they would be making a big deal out of her because, as I've just listed these things here, she's impressive. She's done a lot in her tenure as a public service official, a public servant, any of the roles that she's assumed, she's really kicked the can. I'm trying to be safe here for Christian radio. She's killed it. She's done a great job. Now, she just happens to be sporting the permanent tan. Just in case you're tuning in, I'm talking about Kay Coles James here. She is currently the head of the Heritage Foundation, which is, fantastic. You know how much I appreciate the Heritage Foundation. But Google actually noticed her, noticed some of those sparks flying off of her work and said, hey, let's get her to join us on our external advisory council on artificial intelligence. Because if she's working on the board with NASA, she probably is plugged into AI and we could get her, input. And it's a good connection for them to have, because when they select people to serve on boards, they're usually looking at you. If they tap you to do the job, they're looking at you and your connection. So other boards that you serve on can facilitate you getting tapped to serve on a board like this. And believe me, they probably had a short list. And of course, some of the people that they reached out to just said, I just don't have the time to do it. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I don't have the time. And so they were looking for someone who would say yes and actually devote a significant amount of their time to attending the meetings and giving their input, and also connecting them with people that they might want to talk to at, say, NASA, right? So what could be wrong with this? She's asked to serve on the External Advisory Council. So it's not internal, it's external. External meaning people who don't work for Google, and so they're going to be given information, but they don't have full free reign, and they certainly can't impact hiring and firing decisions, the overall direction of Google. This is a very specific, limited role that she would be, serving on this Artificial Intelligence Advisory Council. Now, enter the liberals. Gizmodo actually went out of their way to attack her, and they called her a ghoul. And that's not the worst they ever come up with, but it's certainly insulting. The purveyor of this nastiness was Brian Menegas, a white guy, millennial hipster, aspiring internet comedian. And he's really upset by her addition to this council. Now, who else is on the council? You might be thinking, well, why did they need her? They could have just asked Michelle Obama. Now, never mind the fact that Michelle Obama doesn't have any experience in artificial intelligence, and she is an impressive public figure. Her background is impressive, but it does not compare to Kay Coles James. Sorry, it just doesn't. And that's not a statement against her. It's a statement in the positive for Kay Coles James's background is clearly more lengthy, more an array of different opportunities that she availed herself to, and she is definitely qualified to fill this role. The other people who are actually on the AI Advisory Council, there are only 8 people on it. William J. Burns, the head of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. He's an Obama crony. And some others. Now, remember, if there were any other conservatives who were tapped to serve in this role on this AI Advisory Council, they also would have been vilified. So the fact that she's the only one getting pounded means she's the only conservative that has been chosen. And that the vitriol is at this level is because it's meant to help her to understand how far outside of the barbecue she really is. She's not allowed to sit with us. She can't be on our advisory council. She dares to defy our rubric for what you can be as a black person. You can be a victim. You can be someone who serves in roles that we give to you, and you can toe the party line. And as long as you call white people racist and rail against old white men and definitely let other people know that you're an anomaly. Michelle Obama is the cream of the crop. She's an anomaly. Other people can't achieve what she's achieved, especially if they are permanently tanned or brown or anything other than white. The only people who can naturally achieve things are white people. If you believe all that, then by all means come serve on our AI Google Council. But if you think you can get somewhere by the sweat of your brow and your prayers and hard work and effort, and you don't think you're impeded by your skin color, then we don't have any room for you. And not only do we not have room for you, but now it's time for us to take you out and show you just how far outside of what we believe in you are. So, of course, where did it show up? In the much vaunted and reported upon Google forums. Social justice cry bullies were on there just, losing their stuffing. And I have to wonder sometimes if the people at Google, when they see these people get on there and start railing, if they don't think to themselves, it's the middle of the workday. Why aren't you working? Or it's the evening. Why aren't you unplugging because you're going to be at work tomorrow? Like, is this all you have to do? Are we paying you too much? Do we have too many employees because everyone has so much time to comment on these internal forums? So Googlers Against Transphobia and Hate, that's an actual group. Googlers Against Transphobia and Hate claim that Kay Coles James, who is a 69-year-old grandma, threatens trans people, other LGBTQ people, I'm reading from their quote, and immigrants. Their petition insists that Google should place representatives from vulnerable communities at the center of decision making. Now, I just shared with you why Google would have chosen Kay Coles James. Not because she's black or conservative, but because she has connections to NASA, and this council deals with artificial intelligence. You don't have to be a rocket science to figure out why they chose her. They want the connection. They want an in at NASA. They want someone that is interested in serving on their board, and they need someone who has the time to do it. Now, I don't know much about her time, but I would assume that since she said yes, she looked at her schedule and their meeting schedule and the commitment that they were looking for, and it was a good fit, and that's why she said yes. So why would white millennials, Google employees, and transphobic victims attack a black grandma for saying yes to an invitation to serve on a council? Because black folks aren't allowed to be conservatives. And that is fascism. Command and control, and it's wrong. When we get back, we are going to have our first guest for you here on Stacy on the Right. Stay right there.
The Ministry of Preborn meets abortion-minded women right where they are. When a young mom sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
This mom chose life for her baby.
She's been such a joy. Her name even means rebirth and sort of being raised up from the ashes. I now see my daughter, and I cannot imagine my life without my happy, lovely, joyful, smart baby, and I'm so grateful.
Preborn runs and leads Christian pregnancy centers all over the country. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Not too long ago, a friend of mine and his wife went to Chicago to enjoy a long weekend. Now, this friend and I share something in common. We both love barbecue. So I told him about a barbecue restaurant he just had to check out. I really sold him about the place, so when he returned from Chicago, I asked him about the restaurant. He said, to my disappointment, we went there with our mouths watering for that great barbecue, but they must have had a change of ownership or management or something because the food was awful. I guess what he tasted was not as good as he expected. Life can be like that too, can't it? What we're served is not as good as what we expect. We keep trying stuff. This lifestyle, this job, this career, this relationship, and we have these great expectations, only to realize that we still lie down at night with emptiness in our souls. Listen to this great invitation in Psalm 34, verses 8 through 10. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. How blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints, for to those who fear him there is no want. The young lions do lack and suffer hunger, but they who seek the Lord shall not be in want of any good thing. You know what? This invitation is as good as it sounds. God is delightfully much more than you are asking for and all you'll ever need. God says, hey, come here, come taste. He is satisfying, permanent, fulfilling. Here's what I want you to remember and do today. Take God up on his invitation. Turn away from your menu, the junk food you've been trying. Give your heart and life to him, and he will satisfy your soul.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being here today. You can find out more about American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk at AFR.net and UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Don't forget to register and plan to attend our Marriage and Family Life Conference that's coming up in the last week of June in Tupelo, Mississippi. You will not regret joining us for the fantastic array of speakers that are going to be blessing us with so much great content for that. Just 2 days. It's Friday and Saturday. Lots of hosts in this network are going to be speaking and giving keynotes, and it's going to be a pleasure to hear them. I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say. So now it's my pleasure to welcome Joel Patrick, who he's a buddy of mine. We met for the first time at CPAC, but I've been following him on Instagram for quite a while now, and I'm loving the content that he's putting out. He's brash. He's that new Trump-supporting, really small government, limited government conservative. He believes in working by the sweat of your brow and earning your own way, and government should stay out of the private lives of Americans. Joel, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about, first, I want to get the Jussie Smollett stuff out of the way. You have an interesting perspective on what's happened there, because I think a lot of us are really shocked to see that money and power and influence really do trump justice, especially in corrupt Chicago. I was still expecting him to have to really have a price to pay, and he has not.
Yeah, absolutely. All of this he was basically trying to prove how racist America was, but in reality, he just proved how if you're an elitist, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you have money and influence, you will always get away with whatever you've done, and you will never be held accountable. And I think he actually tweeted, if I can pull it up here, he tweeted that you have to be careful. There are frauds everywhere. Mm-hmm. He said, I know. And I commented on the tweet. I said, I'll take things that didn't age well for 400. He tweeted that there were frauds everywhere, talking about how people needed to be on the lookout for fraud. Well, what he didn't mention, I guess, in the tweet was that he was one of them.
The chief fraudster of them all. I mean, he should give lessons to other fraudsters because they're not doing it right. He's doing it all the way, all the way right.
What blows my mind is that his attorney went on national TV to say that the city of Chicago owed Jussie Smollett an apology for their false accusation.
So, okay, let's get into this a little further, Joel. And you've been mocking him and making fun of him, but I was surprised to see Chris Rock. Actually, I shouldn't be surprised. Chris Rock is known for kind of stepping away from liberal orthodoxy when he can get jokes out of it because he prioritizes comedy over everything. He really roasted and laid into Jussie Smollett at the, what was it, the Academy Awards, Grammy Awards, some award show.
I think it was like the Black Image Awards.
Yeah.
It was something. Yeah, it was something that was specific for. Was it the NAACP Awards?
Yes, it was. You're correct. I couldn't remember which one it was.
But yeah, and just my mind is just blown. So from day one, I knew something was off, and everyone that questioned Jussie Smollett, they're like, "Oh, you don't want to see the racism that's right in front of you." I didn't believe it was real. It was just there were too many details that didn't add up. And then when it came out that it was false, it was a big "I told you so." Mm-hmm. And then when it came out that there were Nigerians involved, he didn't even. It's like he paid people to commit a hate crime. He didn't even hire real white people. You know, it would have seemed like that would have been like, you know, maybe I should actually hire some white redneck-looking people so that this is more believable. No, he hired Nigerians.
Well, his lawyer said, Joel, that they could have been The black Nigerians could have been wearing whiteface, and that's why he thought they were Trump supporters. I mean, come on. This story just keeps on giving. It's like just when you think it can't get any more absurd, it goes there.
But the fact that you didn't know that the people that were attacking you were black people wearing whiteface, like blackface and whiteface, nobody sees someone in blackface and goes, "Yes, that's a real black person." the facial features don't line up. The same thing would go with whiteface, and then they were wearing masks. So if they were wearing masks, you would only be able to see the white around their eyes, and the white would be so white it would be clear that it wasn't actually a white person. This whole thing was it was absurdity on every level. And then when finally a jury of his own peers convicted him, and then they dropped all the charges, it was just mind blowing. I really hope there is a federal investigation because this is just setting a precedent. There was a black guy in, I believe it was in the South. He carved Trump's name on the side of the church and then set the church on fire. And it came out that it was not done by a white racist Trump supporter, but by a black person trying to scare people into not voting for Trump. I was watching on the news the other day, a member of Congress went in front of the entire assembly talking about how Trump is exactly like Adolf Hitler. And he made a bunch of ridiculous comparisons to why the Jewish people are aware that Trump is Hitler and all this stuff. What president has done more for Israel in recent years than President Trump? Any Jewish person that looks at Trump's Israel record alone would know that Trump has nothing in common with Hitler.
Well, and it's absurd on its face because if he was anything like Hitler, Bibi Netanyahu wouldn't have supported his candidacy, nor would he come here and visit with him. I mean, they're very, very serious about, if you're an anti-Semite, calling it out and being against you. They're only willing to work with people who are willing to acknowledge that Jewish people have a right to exist and should be treated with respect and fairness. And they don't waver on that, which I think that's great. I mean, it's absolutely the way that they should be. But they're very, very clear about it. And they're not respecters of persons. If you're an American and you're an anti-Semite, they love America, but they're not going to put up with your nonsense. Bibi Netanyahu actually called out Ilhan Omar in his last visit here. He called her out specifically in his address. He does not pull any punches. If there was anything anti-Semitic about President Trump, he would have already dealt with it. Not to mention the fact that his children, who are married to Jewish people, a lot of them, would have had something to say. If nothing else, the spouses. It's just a ludicrous claim. It doesn't hold water. I want to talk a little bit about your work with Turning Point. You're on a tour of some sort. Can you tell the listeners what you're doing?
Yeah, we're going to two predominantly liberal schools in South Florida, Florida International University and Florida Atlantic University. And we're just going to spread the message of free market capitalism and why we support the conservative values that we do. I'm going on the tour as an African American. The other young lady, Driana Sixto, on the tour is a Latina. And so we're going to kind of give a young, fresh approach to conservative politics on college campus.
Okay, so I've seen some of the comments on your Instagram page, and apparently you're supposed to do this tour for free. Now, I've worked for free before, and I want to be utterly clear about this. Sometimes if you want to do bigger things, you have to start out at the bottom, and you might do an engagement or two for free, or you might do a few. And there's nothing wrong with that. Also, once you've done a few things, or if the offer involves being paid, this is America. You're allowed to be paid for your work. In fact, it's encouraged. So if you're getting paid for the work, that's fine too. I'm giving that intro just to make it clear where we're coming from. Working pro bono is allowed, but also getting paid, that's encouraged, and that's fantastic. I see a lot of people commenting on your Instagram that you shouldn't be getting paid. If you're getting paid, that's wrong. If you're working for free, that's wrong and you're a rube. If you're working for free, you're doing it because there's something untoward or you're a horrible person. What is the obsession with whether or not you're being paid to do this tour?
So pretty much anything that I do. Have you ever heard the story of the farmer? I think it's the farmer and his son and the donkey. And no matter what the situation is with whoever's riding or whoever's carrying, at one point they end up carrying the donkey. It doesn't matter what I do. They're gonna complain about it. So one of the trolls, I guess, remember that I'm getting paid $5,000. Okay, I'm a pretty decent public speaker, and I enjoy public speaking. There is no universe in which niche public speaking is worth $5,000.
I thought it was impressive. I read that. I was like, that's pretty good.
I'd never charge somebody $5,000. So actually, I am not opposed to being reimbursed for expenses I've incurred, but I have yet to charge for any event ever. The reason is I have a pretty decent job, and I enjoy the work that I do, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the message of conservatism. If people want to reimburse me for travel expenses, that's fine, but I have yet to accept any additional financial resources for my work.
So I thought that was an interesting kind of like it's an offshoot to the original thing, which is you're going to speak at these universities, and that in and of itself has become a really controversial thing for conservatives to do, which is so stupid. It's like so silly that anyone coming and presenting a viewpoint would be an issue at all at a university where all thoughts and ideas are supposed to be welcome so that people can learn. But I also I wanted to touch on something else that I kind of see going on, and I know you work a lot with Turning Point. And they kind of get some of the same backlash that you were describing there, where trolls just come on and they just make any comment that they want. But Turning Point's a huge organization, and you've been to a lot of, like, you went to Blexit in California, you've been to a number of their events in D.C. and across the country, and you're friends with a lot of the people who do some of the more prominent speaking from there. And I think it's fantastic. But what is there's something about Turning Point that draws in young people and it just ignites them. Can you kind of explain what you've experienced when you've been to their events and all of that? I've yet to have an opportunity, like my schedule never matches up, but I'm going. 2019 is my year to go and experience it for myself firsthand and hopefully get to meet Candace Owens. I've already met Charlie Kirk many times. But can you explain some of what that energy is and what fires people up about Turning Point?
Relevant. They've got people that aren't 200 years old and don't look hideous. They have young, energetic individuals that are intelligent and on the cutting edge of everything, and they have utilized social media like no other organization. They are the future of conservative politics in America, and I have every confidence that one of them, I don't know if it's going to be Charlie, I don't know if it's going to be Candace, one of them is going to be a future presidential candidate, and they're going to continue on this legacy that Trump's starting with serious bringing back jobs to America, conservative politics like we've never seen them, defending evangelical and family values. I see that.
I'm excited by what you just said because, and not the 200-year-old thing, because I'm sure that's a euphemism for people who are over the age of 40, and I would fit into that category, and I do not wish to be 200 just yet.
No. 40 is not old.
Well, but still, I mean, I'm no millennial.
I'm talking about like dinosaurs, like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. These people, they're too old to function in society, much less be in charge of writing legislation. I mean, how many times has Nancy Pelosi said we need to do what we can to impeach George Bush? And it's like, wow, that's 2 presidents ago, but interesting idea there.
So you were talking
to Maxine Waters talk. She doesn't even have policy ideas. Look at her policies implemented in her district in California, one of the worst districts in the state. I believe in term limits for dinosaurs.
I do too. I do, and I used to be on the other side of that, Joel. I used to feel like, the term limits are every time there's an election, the American people have a chance to throw the bums out. But we tend not to do that. We've proven to be kind of inept at getting rid of people. We can usher them in, but we don't know when to show them the door. And term limits would really help with that. So
that's also because right now politics is a popularity battle. So if you have name recognition, you will win. You will win, and you will keep winning. The exception is if the person is young and attractive. Like if you look at the policies of Ocasio-Cortez, there's really nothing there. But if you look at her, like physically, look at her. She's like probably one of the youngest people in legislation right now, and she's not an eyesore. So that in and of itself was enough for her to beat her. I think to beat the incumbent, because I don't think he was very popular in that district either.
No, he wasn't. He'd been there a long time, I think 30 years, and he'd really...
She also knocked a lot of doors.
She did.
Personally. She'd send people out to do it. She personally did it.
Well, I can speak from my own personal experience with knocking doors, Joel. If you do it, you engender the kind of support that it just doesn't go away. It lasts for a long time, because when someone sees you at their door, they really, really connect with you. And I just wish that...
It makes you personable. Yep.
Yeah, I wish more GOP politicians would return to that kind of grassroots, get out the vote thing, which I think is also one of the connecting factors for Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens. They do events all over the country, and it's like they're combing the country, trying to leave no portion of the country uncovered, and they're meeting people in person, which means they have this real connection that engenders a kind of support it's extra. It's not just at the normal level. But I wanted to pivot over to what you do for a living. I've seen you advertise. First of all, you have this monster truck, which I've seen in person at CPAC. It's orange. You call it the Trumpster, and it's fantastic. It has a huge American flag on the back, so you can't miss it. But you also have a trades job, and you actually promote the work that you do as something that's important and integral to our economy. Talk a little bit about that. Well, actually, we only have a minute left, so you're going to make like one statement about that.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So I believe that every young person should at least consider a trade, because there are dozens and dozens of people that graduate with, degrees and whatever, and then they go work at Starbucks with a college degree. And maybe you're a manager, but you're working at Starbucks, and you spent $50,000, $80,000 on a degree when you could have gone to trade school for half the money and made twice the money right upon graduation. I own a tree removal company, and we do commercial and residential tree removal. I love it. I love going to work every day. I love doing estimates. I have a friend who's a plumber. He loves it. Another friend's a welder. He loves it. And I'm a big, big, big proponent of what I call #trade life, which is choosing a trade over just going to college, and especially if you're not sure what you want to do and stuff like that.
All right. I'm going to tag Joel on Twitter and Instagram. You guys check out his content. He's amazing. Thank you for your time today. It's great to chat with you again, and I'll talk to you again soon, Joel.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That's Joel Patrick. He works with Turning Point. He's a tradesman. He's an all-around great conservative guy, a millennial, and he's changing the culture. We'll be back with more Stacy on the Right after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
I'd always told the players that winning a Super Bowl wouldn't change their lives, but knowing the Lord would. So Lauren and I agreed that if we retired right after the Colts won the Super Bowl in 2007, we'd be reinforcing the wrong message.
Later that year, Tony wrote his first book, Quiet Strength, which turned out to reach even more people than we ever could have imagined. The letters Tony received from readers touched our hearts.
The book's success created a new platform that the Lord opened for me, and those letters showed me that there's more to life than football and trophies. It's about serving God and telling others about Jesus Christ.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. It's no secret that many of America's public schools are a disaster. In public school, teaching grammar school kids about transgender sexual habits, making them practice witchcraft using Ouija boards, indoctrinating socialism, and many other things have parents at a loss for what to do. Enter the Copy Committee. The unsung heroes of grade schools across the country are the moms who spend a couple of hours per week copying worksheets and handouts for the teachers. This job isn't glamorous or particularly time-consuming, and it's not exciting, but it is a great way to make a friend out of your child's teacher and get your eyes on every sheet of paper your child sees. We cannot assume our public school isn't engaging in these practices. Your child is in enemy territory, and you have to act accordingly. Monitoring the school can be a partnership with stay-at-home moms if you're a working mom. In other words, make it happen. I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
This is Fox on Justice. Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, both appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court by President Trump, both highly rated by the Conservative Federalist Society, both overwhelmingly supported by Senate Republicans. But Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are not proving to be ideological twins. Recently, the two Trump High Court nominees have taken opposite positions on rulings, including a death penalty case. Patrick Murphy was convicted of taking part in the murder of a Texas police officer in 2000. He's sentenced to die, but the state of Texas has refused Murphy's request for a Buddhist spiritual advisor to be present at his execution. The state cited security concerns, saying only carefully vetted Christian and Muslim spiritual advisors are allowed in the death chamber. Justice Gorsuch supported that view, but Justice Kavanaugh wrote the opinion blocking the execution. Kavanaugh writing, "The court has repeatedly ruled that religious discrimination violates the Constitution." With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I have full confidence in the Attorney General and his assessment. He's one of the most respected members of the law community in the country, and I think he's laid out very clearly what his assessment is, and I have full confidence in that. And look, let's not forget, Kristen, let's not forget that the people that have been involved in this process, they've wasted 2 years of their life, and they need to find a way to validate it. They've lost in 2016, they lost on the collusion battle, and now they're looking for any and everything they can to continue to attack this president because they have no message. They have nothing to talk and contrast with him, so the only idea they have is to attack the president, and clearly it's not working because he's doing quite well, and so is the country.
It's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I love how the reporters ask her a question, and then she starts to answer, and then they just start talking, and it's like a speech. They're just, you can hear their voice in the background, just going on and on. She starts answering. They keep talking. They don't even bother to check and see if her lips are moving, if she's answering. And other people are sitting there, other reporters, trying to record, take notes, do something so they can catch a comment and put it. Because these people have to turn out like multiple stories a day on the White House press beat. And she's talking. She's actually talking and giving information. And that one reporter is just blabbing. So we have some audio for you later. We're going to listen to the president talk about whether or not he's inclined to share his tax returns. And it's the same thing. Someone just starts talking, just like a reporter just starts talking. So you can hear the gaggle. And we don't have that part of the audio. I cut it off before then. But another reporter starts asking a question. And then one of the employees of the White House starts yelling, "Okay, it's over. Time to go. The president has said thank you. Thanks for coming in. Reporters move out." She has to yell at the top of her lungs and actually stand behind people and kind of herd them off. And they're still asking questions. And you know, I get it. You need, like I said, you need something for those stories, but wow, right? Wow. So that was Sarah Huckabee Sanders talking about the Mueller report and also the president's taxes and how they're not interested in playing political games with Democrats in Congress. And I couldn't agree more. If you look at the things that are going on in this country and the serious issues that we're facing, do we really have time to worry about President Trump's taxes? That's what, and if you're wondering why I'm saying that, because I know there's more than one somebody out there who's angry that I just said that. Guess what, guys? You said the same thing when conservatives, Republicans, people on the right, Tea Party folks, were asking about the transcripts for President Obama from Columbia University and you know, his education. Remember, the previous presidents had submitted their kindergarten grade school reports all the way up through college so that people could look and see how many days they missed out of school, how many A's and B's they made, if they ever made D's and F's. All of that was available. All of their writings from when they were in college, if they wrote for the newspaper or something else like that, all of that was made available. But then here comes President Barack Hussein Obama. He decided he wasn't going to share that information. He sealed his transcripts from his 2 higher educational facilities. He wouldn't allow any of the papers. He was the editor of the Harvard Law Review, if I'm not mistaken. He wouldn't allow that to come out. The pieces that he edited, the actual articles he wrote for that publication. And everybody on the left was like, we have bigger problems to work through. We have real issues in this country that we need to work on. And all conservatives want to do is sit up and look at old records from when he was in his 20s. Who cares what he wrote when he was on the Harvard Law Review? Y'all need to get a life. Remember all that? I remember it. People were tweeting it to me. Why do you care what he did in college? I'm like, well, I mean, all the other presidents he's not all the other presidents. So, hey, shoe, welcome to the other foot. Who cares what's in his tax returns? He's not all the other presidents. We have bigger issues to work through. We have bigger fish to fry. We want to get on with the business of governing America and getting his agenda accomplished, and we don't care what's in his tax returns. Does that work for you? I don't care if it works for you. It's working for me. So let's talk about this. And again, the independent audit that's been called for by Senator Josh Hawley, the junior senator from the great state of Missouri. He's actually called on Twitter chief Jack Dorsey to open the tech giant up to an independent outside audit after the so-called accidental temporary suspension of the movie Unplanned's Twitter account. Now, over the weekend, they suspended it for no apparent reason. Then they said, hey, we got to, put it back up there. And then they've since de-verified the account. And when they take away the check mark, I think it decreases the number of followers. It's weird. So the quote from Senator Hawley is, over the weekend, Twitter suspended Unplanned movie for no apparent reason. Latest example of deplatforming pro-life and conservative voices. Time for @Jack to open Twitter to a full independent outside audit on its speech policies and then publish the results. Now, he was retweeting Alexandra DeSantis. She said, Scoop, Holly Moe has sent a letter to Jack Dorsey this morning calling on him to allow a third-party audit of Twitter. And she was reporting that out of the National Review online site. Now, National Review is reporting that Hawley, who is a vocal critic of big tech, that's an issue he's made, he's availed himself of in his short tenure thus far as a senator. He is actually raising questions about Twitter's commitment to free speech. And he says, quote, just as bad after you lifted the suspension, 99% of Unplanned's followers had mysteriously disappeared. Now, that's true. Twitter said it takes time for an account's followers to fully replenish after it's reinstated. He says, we're not hiding follower counts or disallowing certain people from following. We enforce our rules dispassionately and do not engage in so-called shadow banning. Now, the movie made $6.1 million in under 1,100 theaters, which is not a full, nationwide release. It was a limited release, and it was what they could do based on distribution. So the theaters decide what they're going to carry, but they go to distribution networks to make those choices. And if a distribution network refuses to offer your movie within their network, then the theaters in that network don't get a chance to offer it on opening weekend. But when they see a huge draw, a moneymaker, then they'll go to the distribution network and demand that, the movie be made available, or the distribution network itself will say, we're not going to leave all this money on the table because people will go to the theater where it's showing, so we're going to put it in our network too. So we're seeing more theaters added for the film. I renew my call for you to go out and see the movie. And I'll put this story, which is an opinion piece by James Rogers. It's up over at Fox News. I will put this up on the Facebook page, and I'll throw it in over here on the YouTube live stream as well. So you can check it out for yourself and share it, because I think it's important when senators decide they're going to do something about the tech industry. And I've been on the fence a little bit. Obviously, I don't want them regulated like utilities. I don't want to have a Twitter tax, levied against me by the federal government to help support Twitter. Because that's what they end up doing. They'll say, we're going to regulate you. And then they'll say, well, we better go ahead and institute a tax to pay for the costs of the government regulating this entity. And then before you know it, we're all getting taxed for Twitter. And I know there's just literally tens of thousands of you listening to this show who you don't have a Twitter account. So why should you be taxed for it? It is a private entity, but they have to have some rules under which they're going to operate and some penalties associated with that. Regulation, like continuous oversight, I'm definitely against that. But rules and regulations that you could go to your state attorney general and say, look, they violated this rule, and then the state attorney general open up a case against them and they have to pay the cost of the prosecution because they're the violator. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. All right, let's open up the phone lines. We have 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. You can call in and join the program. So I also want to talk about this young woman who was just, it's just such a sad story because she's just so well loved and her family is so devastated over her being killed so senselessly for a mistake. And you know, again, why wouldn't the man whose car she got into, why wouldn't he have said, "You're in the wrong car"? Well, they haven't had much out about him other than they showed a picture of him. But you have to think that he showed up in that location where Uber drivers were showing up with the intent of capturing someone and doing ill to them, which is what he did. He's since been caught. He's obviously going to be prosecuted. So what was the sense in what he did? It's just a senseless killing. And it's so upsetting. But I want to share what I found here with this story. And the issue that we're all facing here is that one of the things that we have to do is be really careful. But in an instance like hers, where it was a simple mistake, it's just like you just can't prepare for every eventuality. That's why I say when you leave out, say a quick prayer for grace and traveling mercies. Ask the Lord to protect you. So I want to get through this really quickly. I'm just going to devote a minute or so here. The recent murder of 21-year-old University of South Carolina college student Samantha Josephson. She's the young woman who got into the car mistakenly, and she was killed. She thought it was her Uber, but it wasn't. It's a common mistake. Anyone who's ever waited for a driver and walked up to the wrong car can, attest to this. And so there's a hashtag now, what's my name campaign, which urges people to pay more attention to which car they're getting into. But the solution, according to one of Josephson's classmates, Sydney Ford, who is lobbying Uber and Lyft to add QR codes to their apps that would easily match a driver to a passenger as the passenger approached. Nearly 23,000 people have signed the petition on change.org to add the QR codes. Now, if you're not aware of what those are, QR codes are they look like barcodes, like the ones that you see on the items that you buy at the grocery store or Walmart or wherever. But a QR code is something that you can actually go to a QR code generator, and you can generate a QR code that takes you to your website, that takes anyone who takes that picture. It basically takes them to a place of information. They take a picture of it with their QR code reader app on their phone, and they instantly are taken to whatever website you want to direct them to, or a picture, a splash page, whatever. What they're saying is if the QR codes were all on the back of the cars or the front or the passenger side door, whatever, before you get in, instead of getting in and what you do now, my daughter and I did this, is you verify with the driver. You don't get into a car until you verified the car is the same make and model as your car that is being sent to you. That's what Uber does. I don't know about Lyft, but they send you like black Toyota Prius or black Escalade, license plate number. But to even get around that and to make it even simpler, you could simply have the QR code there, which you would scan with your phone, and it would take you to a picture of the car or the driver's name, etc. And if it didn't match if it didn't say match, then you don't get in the car. It's a great idea. Anything they can do to increase safety. Uber has also expressed sorrow for the family. They've been working with law enforcement over the fake driver issue since 2017. They want to raise awareness. They didn't comment on the QR code idea, but their other safety initiatives are push notifications during pickup to remind people to make sure they're getting into the right car, etc. So let's go to the phones now. Angela in Oklahoma. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what's your comment?
Ma'am?
Yes, what's your comment, Angela? Okay, so I'm not sure what was going on with that connection, but we lost her. Sorry about that, Angela. Let's go to Ryan in Massachusetts. Ryan, thank you so much for calling the show. Hey, Ryan,
Hi,
thanks
Stacy.
Hi, how's it going? You got to turn your radio down. Okay, it looks like I'm not sure. Not sure what we've got going on with the phones right now, but we can go back to Ryan whenever they clear up whatever the issue is. I think one of the things that is so disturbing about this is that it can happen to anyone, kind of going back to what we were discussing just a second ago with the ride-sharing apps, and they're so convenient, and they're so much better than taxi cabs. No offense to people who drive taxis, but getting into an Uber, as often as I've taken them, I would say maybe twice I got into a vehicle where I was kind of like, okay, this isn't any better than a taxi cab. Most of the time, it's a lot better, and the people who are driving are really fascinating, and you get a little bit of interesting conversation. Or if you don't want to talk, you don't get any at all. They're very easygoing about that. And there's a comment from Lyft. Lyft said they value feedback from riders and drivers. They didn't comment on the idea specifically. They pointed to their own existing safety features, including Lyft Amp, which is a display that sits on a driver's dash and acts as a beacon, changing color, including green, orange, yellow, purple, and gray, to match the passenger's app, helping them identify their ride more easily. Now, that is something that works. That's fantastic. That's just as good as a QR code. So I've seen those on Lyfts, because often when I'll be catching an Uber, Lyft drivers will be nearby, and they have that. It's on their dashboard. Actually, it's on the ceiling at the front of the windshield, so you can't miss it. And you see people looking at their phone and walking up, so that must be how they match when they're using Lyft. Yeah. All right. Sorry to the callers. I don't know what's going on. It's raining here, but you're calling into Tupelo, so it might be like an internet thing. All right. That is the show for today. Thank you for being with us. We will definitely, Lord willing, be back with you tomorrow with more Stacy on the Right. Thanks for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. If you're sticking around, there's more news and information from onenewsnow.com coming at you right now.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News Now mobile app. It neatly categorizes news and articles from the One News Now website in an easy-to-find format. You can read the stories, watch videos, and conveniently share any news story. It's now available for download from your phone's app store.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Trump is backing off his threat to close the U.S.-Mexico border this week. The president spoke from the Oval Office today and now says Mexico will get a deadline to make some changes.
We're going to give them a one-year warning, and if the drugs don't stop or largely stop, we're going to put tariffs on Mexico and products, in particular cars. The whole ball game is cars. It's the big ball game. With many countries, it's cars. And if that doesn't stop the drugs, we close the border.
The president is accusing Mexico of not doing enough to stop a migrant and drug influx at the southern border. It's been 8 years after a suburban Chicago boy went missing, and there could be a break in the case. Jeff Manasso reports from Chicago.
Investigators in Newport, Kentucky say a 14-year-old boy described as skinny, bruised, and anxious was found early Wednesday, telling police his name is Timothy Pitson, who vanished when he was 6 from his family in Aurora, Illinois.
He said he was kidnapped. He said that he escaped from 2 subjects.
Pitson's mother was found dead in an Illinois hotel room in 2011 from suicide, leaving a note behind, saying Timothy would never be found.
We never stopped looking for him, thinking about him, and that we love him.
Pitson's grandmother and investigators anxiously awaiting DNA testing to make a positive match. In Chicago, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A couple of important pro-life bills could soon become law in Indiana. Charlie Butts has more.
The Indiana legislature has given its stamp of approval for a measure that has been in the hopper for a couple of decades. Mike Victor of Indiana Right to Life explains.
Indiana has passed a conscience clause protection bill. This will extend protections to nurses, physicians, assistants, as well as pharmacists, so that they cannot be forced to participate in an abortion.
Doctors are covered too. Lawmakers have been working since the 1990s to protect pharmacists of conscience who don't want to handle abortion-causing drugs such as RU-486. The legislature also passed a ban on dismemberment abortions, in which abortionists rip the preborn baby apart limb by limb, causing it to bleed to death in the womb.
It passed by overwhelming margins in both the Senate and the House. We expect this will be another landmark law that comes out of the state of Indiana. It will face a legal challenge, but this challenge perhaps will be the one that percolates up to the Supreme Court and becomes the demise of Roe versus Wade.
That's the decision that legalized abortion in all states. Governor Eric Holcomb is expected to sign off on both bills. I'm Charlie Butts.
A pro-gun activist is praising a Colorado sheriff for pledging to refuse to enforce the state's proposed red flag law. Chad Groening has more.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis is poised to sign a bill passed by the Democratic-controlled legislature that would allow family, members of the household, or law enforcement to petition a court to have an individual's gun seized or surrendered if that person is deemed a risk to themselves or others. But Weld County Sheriff Steve Ream says he would rather go to jail than enforce a so-called red flag law. Mike Hammond is legislative counsel to Gun Owners of America.
I think he speaks for the sheriffs of roughly 1/2 of the counties in Colorado and a substantial number of counties in 9 other states. There are 200 counties in 9 states who have said, we're not going to comply with these gun confiscation red flag laws.
Hammond says red flag laws are patently unconstitutional.
Basically, it allows police or an angry ex to go into a secret court and get an order to strip you of all of your guns, in addition to ransack your house, and if you resist, to shoot you. And that's happened in Ferndale, Maryland, in which a gun owner was shot to death by police serving one of these red flag orders. They're just patently unconstitutional.
Hammond says GAO intends to challenge these red flag laws in the courts. I'm Chad Groening.
American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
There are people who definitely lied and misled Congress, okay? So if they don't go to prison, we're going to have a two-tier justice department.
Kristen, let's not forget that the people that have been involved in this process, they've wasted 2 years of their life, and they need to find a way to validate it. They've lost in 2016. They lost on the collusion battle, and now they're looking for any and everything they can.
Are these opinion shows or these news programs? Because that's an important distinction. And what people tell me, American people, everywhere I go in this country, that's what they want to know.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey, welcome. Hour 2 coming at you fast and strong right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thanks for joining us and for supporting us and for being a huge part of what we do here. We appreciate you. I'm Stacy Washington, host of this program, and I'm also the Second Amendment Foundation's Journalist of the Year for 2018. I'm also the co-chair of National Center's Advisory Council Project 21. You can find out more at nationalcenter.org. And we're happy to have you here. We are going to be chatting in next segment with Walker Wildmon. He's the Vice President of Operations for American Family Association. He's joining us to talk about Patriot Academy. Should be a fantastic interview. Tell all your friends. This is the kind of thing that if you're a parent, you're always looking for quality, good, trustworthy, safe options for your kids for the summer. You're looking for something that'll ignite a real love for not just this country, but a love for God and a passion for being, of service, because not everyone's going to go into politics or things like that, but you definitely want them to understand the process and what their public servants should be expected to do. This is hard to, manage on our own as parents to teach all of these things, which is why summer camps can be so useful. But you want to have something good, something you trust, something that's vetted by an organization that you're partnered with, like American Family Association. So he's going to tell us all about Patriot Academy, and I'm really excited to talk to him about that. We are going to now let's quickly run through a bit of this information about President Trump saying he's not inclined to give out his tax returns to the Democrats. It's number 4.
The Democratic House Ways and Means Committee moments ago asked the IRS for 6 years of your tax returns.
Is that all?
That's all.
Oh, usually it's 10, so I guess they're giving up. No, we're under audit, despite what people said, and we're working that out. As I'm always under audit, it seems, but I've been under audit for many years because the numbers are big, and I guess when you have a name, you're audited. But until such time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that. Thank you.
And then after that is when they started screaming and bellowing, and he did actually answer 2 more questions after that as they were being ushered out by people who kind of just refused to. They just refused. They were just like, we're not going to stop running our mouths, and it was pretty interesting. He almost seems like you can catch a little bit of exhaustion there as an undertone in his voice, because this is still, it's like a thorn in his side that he's constantly audited. It costs him hundreds of thousands of dollars to be audited, because he's got to pay these tax attorneys who are like $1,300 an hour to do the work of taking care of the audit. An audit is not something where you just say, oh, they're auditing me, let me take care of this myself. If you want to get out of it clean, you usually hire some good representation. If you own a multinational business with more than 10,000 employees, it's not an option for you and a couple of your adult kids who run the company to just sit down and run through the information and answer the request for the audit yourself. So this is wildly expensive. It's clearly persecution, and yet he just accepts it as a matter of course for him doing business. And now to have the Democrats try to make the fact that he doesn't want to release the names and personal information of people who do business, the vendors, everyone who does business with him, so they can be attacked and special prosecutors can go into their personal lives and vilify them and basically work them over like mob bosses to try to see if they can force them to say bad about things about the president. Why would he want to expose people who've done business with him to that kind of experience? I mean, it's just so easy. It's easy to decipher why they want this info. It's not even difficult for us to see why are they so dead set on getting his tax returns? Because they want to get at the people who've done business with him. They want to make him a pariah. The same way Democrats are using government agencies to attack businesses, political campaign type businesses that have done business with the Trump campaign before. They're trying to scare all of the good consultants into basically saying, yeah, we'll pass on that. We're not going to submit a proposal for doing your internet or doing your, helping you with your campaign, get out the vote effort. Do you know how many thousands of vendors work on a presidential campaign? If they can scare the very best of them off so that they won't work with the president, then he'll have to take, less qualified people. Now, I will say, sometimes when someone won't work with you, I've had this experience before. Someone will decline to do something for you, and you reach out in good faith. You say, hey, I'm looking for this, or would you like to work with me on that? And they say no. And at first, of course, obviously you're like, well, why don't you want to, what's wrong with you? Or what's wrong with me? What's going on here? Why was that like a straight hard no, a hard pass? Like you didn't even let the last word get out of my mouth before you slammed the door shut. Sometimes, I say like all the time, God has sent in someone who is so much better to do the job. It's amazing. It's like 1 second you're working on trying to put something together and then it falls apart and you start to kind of despair, like, well, I guess I'm just not going to get to do this. And then God's like, yeah, you're not going to get to do it your way. You're going to do it. I got a better way for you. And he sets it up so you can do it. And it's a fun experience. It's beneficial. It's edifying. You learn a lot, and you get the opportunity to then, of course, you can say, well, God put this together. You know, he gets all the glory for this, and it just worked out great. So hopefully that'll be the experience for the president for these vendors that are currently they're literally getting subpoenaed by the New York Attorney General. They're being attacked by the IRS. It's crazy. We're in America. This is not supposed to be able to happen. So now let's pivot over. So Lara Logan has been on a tear this past few weeks. Remember we played some audio of her. I think she was on 60 Minutes, and she was just ripping and running all over the media, NBC, everybody. Well, now she's going after CNN's Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon. She had a really interesting question to ask about them. It's number 5.
And as journalists, it seems to me, you know, our job is to do that, right? That's our duty. But what I really want to know is Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, are they opinion hosts? Are these opinion shows, or are these news programs? Because that's an important distinction. And what people tell me, American people, everywhere I go in this country, that's what they want to know. When they turn on the news, they want the facts. When they turn on an opinion show like yours, they want your opinion, right? So where do these people stand?
And remember, CNN will often have their hosts who deal almost exclusively in opinion. They'll have them on CNN saying horrible things about Fox News and how Fox News is only, they're all opinion. Well, Fox News it's not all only opinion. They have their opinion hours, yes, but they also have their hard news shows where you honestly, that's what you're getting is hard news. So it's ironic to hear them asking that question, but that's fine. You know, let them ask. Now you've got journalists, actual journalists who do news, asking whether they're only opinion. It's a great question to turn around on them and kind of, can you answer the question? You're asking it about Fox. What about you? Worry about yourself. Look at your own eyeball. What's going on with you? So I thought that was a great question. So yesterday we talked a little bit about this story. I didn't get a chance to get to it. We had a lot of callers, and of course, if Jason worked magic on the phone, so you can call in now safely if you'd like to, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I talk about this mortgage refinance application soaring the most in 4 years as the rates are plummeting. So 18.6% week over week increase as mortgage rates continue to plummet lower. Mortgage rates have collapsed to their lowest rate since January of 2018, and the applications have soared, which this number is led by refinances. Now, the rate shift tends to lead applications by around 3 to 4 weeks, suggesting that there is more to come in this mini refinance boom. Purchase mortgage applications growth slowed in the last week, rising just 3.4%, but refinancings exploded 38.5% week over week. That's the biggest weekly jump since February of 2015. So there's also an explosion in adjustable rate mortgages, the second biggest surge since January of 2001. It's not exactly good news for everyone, but it's great news for consumers. If you want to get a really low rate, if your rate's sitting at 4.5%, 5%, you can refinance. And banks now, I remember when my husband and I when we bought our first home and we went to refinance it, and we could only refinance it back into what it was originally. So we had to basically refinance into a 30-year. We weren't allowed to say we're 3 years into the loan, so we want to refinance for 27 more years. Now you can do that. If you've had your house for 10 years and you currently have 20 years left, or 17 years because you've been paying an extra payment every year total, then you know what you can do is you can say, I want to refinance into this lower rate. You can pay the fees and stuff up front and not roll them in, or you can roll them in. It's up to you. I don't know what your financial situation is. I'm just talking about what we've been able to do on occasion. And you can say, we have 17 years left on our mortgage and we want to leave it at 17 years. We don't want to refinance starting at 30 again. So you don't end up with a refinance for a lower rate, actually adding years back on to the completion of your mortgage. So I recommend that you check it out. Not a financial advisor. Don't play one on TV. Not telling you what to do, but this is a real news story from CNBC. I checked with a couple of friends I have who work in the banking industry, and they said they're seeing a lot of business. A lot of people are coming in. They've had their mortgages for years, and they have a rate that is significantly higher than 3.75, and they're refinancing. And so it could be a good time to do that. If you even are slightly interested, the best thing to do is to check with your mortgage lender and see if they offer a streamlined refinance. And if not, you can kind of test the market in your area and see who's offering a good, solid refinance package. And maybe check with friends who've done refinances, ask them who they liked, who had a good experience, and then do a referral, say, hey, my friend referred me to you. And they really pay attention to you when you're referred from a friend because they don't want to offend you and have you tell the friend and then that word of mouth get around because that costs them actual refinances, which is money in their hand that they don't want to mess up. So I thought that was a really interesting story. So let's talk a little bit more about we've also got this tons of leaking going on out of the swamp against President Trump. Now, I heard at the top of the hour at the news bit there that the president is backing off of his threat to shut the border down. I think that's such a huge mistake for him to back off of it. If he only shut it for 2 days, it's like what happens with kids when you say, you do that one more time, I'm taking that toy, or I'm taking your phone, or if you bring home a C again, you're going to have to lose all your devices for, until the report cards come out or until the progress reports come out. And then they bring home a C, and then you're like, well, I hate to take all of your devices. And so then you let them get away with it. And the next semester they come back, they got 2 C's. And your kid is clearly capable of doing AB work or AAA 1B work. You know what I mean? Like your kid can do it. They're just not performing up to par because they're unmotivated and they've got too many fun things in their life. Too many perks and bennies. That's what I call it at our house. I'll tell the kids in a heartbeat. I feel a perks and benefit confiscation coming on, and people will literally be like, wait, what is it what's going on? That's what one of our daughters will say. What's going on, Mom? And it's like so clipped. I'm like, you know what's going on? And then I'll start complaining. She'll have an answer. Nope, I actually did do that. Or, oh, no, it's not my turn to do that. Get their attention, right? Well, that's what the president has to do with Mexico. He has to shut the border down for a while, because he's threatened it twice and they're not helping us. They owe us their help. We put our jobs and our factories in their country. We let their people live here illegally and send their money back to them in remittances. We boost their GDP. They owe us. The president should shut that thing down. I'm not sorry that I said it. He should shut it down. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Walker Wildmon, Vice President of Operations for AFA. Stay right there.
Here's Walker Wildmon for Redeem Clean laundry products.
Not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use the multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean laundry products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
On my radio program, I'm always looking for ways to help listeners develop discernment. With so many sources of news and information and so many claims being made by pundits and politicians, it's helpful to know how to sort them out. Here are 2 tools for your discernment toolbox. First, be skeptical when someone on the left makes a sweeping claim. Dennis Prager goes even further. He says you should always assume the left is lying to you. He observes that truth is a liberal value and truth is a conservative value, but people on the left say whatever advances their immediate agenda, Power is their moral lodestar. Therefore, truth is always subservient to it. He applies this to a number of stories ranging from the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy ideas to the claim that college campuses have a culture of rape to warning that we have 12 years left because of global warming. In each case, he argues that the left lies about the issue. Now, you might find that statement too extreme, which is why I add a second tool of discernment that usually helps confirm the first. Pay less attention to what someone on the left says. Pay more attention to what someone on the left does. Let's look at two examples Dennis Prager mentions. The left claims that our universities are saturated with a culture of rape, but if they really believe that, they would never send their daughters to college. In their hearts, they really know that this claim is untrue. What about global warming? Do people who warn us about the dangers of climate change act like it is an existential threat? Most people issuing these warnings have a carbon footprint vastly larger than ours. If they really are that concerned, we would expect them to be the first to change their lifestyle. If you want to know what is true, use some of these tools of discernment to check out some of the news and claims being made today. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. It's so good to be with you today, and I hope that you're surviving whether you're in the gloom and doom. I got a whole lot of rain going on here in Missouri, but I'm just actually so glad that it's not snow or hail or freezing temperatures, that I'm just going to say, I'm so glad to see this weather. Yeah, I'm going to have to be totally satisfied with what I'm getting because it's not the thing I was getting, and I'm super happy about that. So right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Walker Wildmon. He's the Vice President of Operations for American Family Association, and he was actually just on the radio. I listened to him for just a little bit while I was running around doing stuff here at home. He was filling in for Brian Fisher a little bit ago, if I saw that right on Facebook. Walker, thanks for joining us.
Stacy, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I tried to fill Brian's shoes earlier, which are kind of hard to fill, but I did my best.
You know, I would say, God bless you, because that's a tough
Amen.
one. Yeah,
I did what I could.
Yeah, I thought you sounded good, but I'm just saying you got that right. That guy. He's. I always say, when someone's killing it, they got sparks flying off him. He's got huge sparks flying off of him on a daily basis here, and we're so glad to have him. So let's talk about Patriot Academy. I watched the video online, and I was like, yes, how did I not know about this?
Yeah, Patriot Academy, it's kind of gone unheard of, if you will, amongst the conservative movement, kind of unspoken about, and maybe that's because it's a relatively new thing as being in the last 10 years. But Patriot Academy is headed up by a fellow by the name of Rick Green, who is also associated with folks our listeners will know about, and that is David Barton of Wall Builders.
Oh, yeah.
Many people know David Barton.
Right.
Well, Rick Green is basically a disciple of David Barton. And so what Rick Green and David Barton and some of those over at Wall Builders and Patriot Academy are doing is they're having these regional academies, these 2 to 3 day academies for young people ages 18 to 25. And these academies spend 3 days teaching young people about the Constitution, the founding of our country, and why it's so important to preserve our Judeo-Christian values. And so it's a very, very vital academy. And, I've been looking around, and really the left has nothing like this. Yeah, the left is hijacking and stealing our kids and indoctrinating them in high school and college. But as far as training up knowledgeable young leaders who can lead the next generation, the left is not doing this. And so that's the great thing about Patriot Academy.
So for parents who are listening to this and they're like, okay, Patriot Academy, what exactly will kids get to do when they go there? Because you said it's 3 days. So this is not the full Monday through Friday or Sunday to Saturday experience. It's a little bit shorter. What do kids get to do and experience when they it comes to their region and they go and take this on?
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually an alumni of Patriot Academy. I went a couple years ago, and what we did is we go through what is called a mock legislative process. So we go and we put on the role or the hat of a legislature as a lawmaker, as an elected representative. And so we have committee meetings, we have floor votes, we have debates, and we have other kind of meetings and speeches that we give and listen to. And so we go and act like we're legislatures, and we have to bring our own bills, bring our own legislation and present it and argue on behalf of it. And so it really teaches our students to appreciate the legislative democratic process that we have in the United States. And it also teaches them the founding of our country. And, you know, some might say, well, isn't this only relevant for people who maybe want to run for office? And I would say this course, Patriot Academy, is relevant for all young people, because whether you're going to be a business leader or you're going to be a state representative or a U.S. senator, it helps. It's important to know how our government works and why it's important to respect the Constitution. And so that's what Patriot Academy does.
So it sounds kind of fun. And I know there can be times where we as parents are like, that sounds fun. And then the kids are like, it's not fun, you know?
Right. Well, you know, this is fun. And students may be a little resistant to it. They may view it as like school during the summer, but it's really not. It's very interactive. It's fun. It's structured, but it's not so structured that you feel like, you know, you're kind of being bossed around everywhere. So there's a lot of freedom, a lot of fun, and you stay at a nearby hotel, you room with fellow students, and, you know, you can get to know people who are once strangers. They become friends and share, and then you can share, you know, where you're from, what you want to do for a living. But I had a great time at Patriot Academy, very thoughtful, very engaging time at Patriot Academy. And the great thing is you don't have to travel across the country to go to Patriot Academy. They have what are called regional academies. And so there's regional academies throughout the United States. So you can maybe go drive only 2 or 3 hours and be at a regional academy and go and participate in Patriot Academy.
Now, do the kids end up staying in a hotel, or do they end up staying in, like, you know, because I'm trying to figure out how, when parents are thinking about, how it works.
Yeah, well, I know I'm not sure about every academy, but I know for the Texas National Academy, which is the main hub for the operation in Texas, we go to Austin, Texas, which is the state capital of Texas, and we stay at a nearby hotel. And, of course, you room with the same sex and the same age. So I was a senior in high school going to college, and I roomed with 2 or 3 young men my same age. And so that's usually how it works. And, of course, there's a curfew, and there's chaperones, and there's supervision. So it's not a free-for-all. But that's kind of how it works. It's almost like a summer camp, if you will.
Okay, so what about parents who are concerned about the cost? Is it
Sure.
expensive, or would you say it's reasonable?
I would say it's reasonable. And here's the great thing about Patriot Academy. No, it's not free. Yes, it does cost, but they have a what's called a kind of like a scholarship program set up where you can qualify for a scholarship. But if you want to just raise the money on your own, they have a great way where you can go out and appeal to maybe people you go to church with, maybe your neighbors. Go and present to them in 5 or 10 minutes what you want to do, why you want to go to Patriot Academy, and Patriot Academy provides a way to raise your own funds. So your parents don't feel the heavy burden of paying for a couple $100 worth of this academy. Instead, you can go out and raise your own funds, and it teaches you hard work and how to earn something.
Okay, I want to give some information. First of all, patriotacademy.com is where you can go and find out about what Walker is discussing. If you're just tuning in, welcome into the show. We're speaking with Walker Wildmon. He's the Vice President of Operations for American Family Association and all-around awesome guy. And he's joining us to talk about this Patriot Academy. Patriotacademy.com is the website. 2019 Patriot Academy applications and dates are actually open right now. They have Southeast is going to be at the Florida State Capitol, June 12th through 14th. Southwest is in Arizona, June 19th through 21. Northwest is in Idaho State Capitol, June 24th through 26. And the Northeast Regional Academy is in Delaware, July 10th through 12th. And then the National Academy is in Texas at their state capitol, July 28th through August 3rd. We actually have a graduating senior this year, and he's our most politically active kid, and I'm wondering if he'd be interested in this. So I'm going to forward him the link, and I'm going to text him in the...
Yeah, and Stacy, one more thing is, you know, around here at AFA, we joke because President Trump continually appoints constitutionalist conservative judges to these hundreds of judgeships that are open across the country, these federal seats, and, of course, the Supreme Court. And, you know, we keep joking, are there any more conservatives out there to appoint? Because he's appointed so many to these judgeships, and which is excellent. President Trump is doing great on that. But the reality is, if we want conservatives, rock solid conservatives, constitutionalists to be around for years to come, to where they can fill these judgeships, to where they can run for governor, run for president, run for Senate, we're going to have to train them up, and that's what Patriot Academy does.
And so I want to piggyback on what you just said. We do talk about that a lot, don't we, Walker? Don't we kind of say, well, where are all the conservatives, or how do we, why are all the kids turning into liberals, or, and I've had people criticize me and say, you're just so political. And actually, I'm really, like, obviously when I'm on the air, I am. And if you look at my social media, I am. But when I'm not on these channels, I'm a mom and I'm a wife, I'm doing that stuff. But if there's an opportunity to intersect what my kids they're absorbing the news, whether I say anything about it or not. There's an opportunity to point them to a Christian worldview and intersect that with politics. I have to take the chance, because the liberals never miss an opportunity to promote Planned Parenthood and all of their nasty stuff. So I got to try to fight back on that. God has really told us as parents that we're to speak about him and his word in the morning, in the noonday, in the evening, when they go to bed. He says all day we're supposed to be teaching our kids. So what better way to kind of solidify that than to give them something fun to do? Because they're literally, you said they go to the hotel, and I'm on the website. It says we're staying at the hotel next door in the Florida one, and you walk across to the state capitol in Tallahassee, Florida, which I happen to have been there before because we used to live in Florida years ago. So this is cool. Like, this is something they're going to do. You're not there. You're not chaperoning. They're like adulting here.
Absolutely. And what happens is, if you go, maybe you're a freshman, if you will, like I was the first time you go, then the next year you're called an alumni, and then you can chair a committee, you can lead groups, you can take a more leadership role the next year you go. And so there's a progression here. The more times you go, the more you rise in leadership, if you will. So it's excellent. And to your point about what we're going to teach our kids and politics and this or that, the reality is that those we elect in political positions and in leadership positions throughout our country, they're making policies that we have to live under. And so if we have to follow the law, which Scripture teaches us to follow the law, of course, if it's not directly contradicting God's law, but if we have to follow the law and be obedient to governing authorities, then why not have Christians making the laws? So we have to teach our kids about politics, government, and, of course, many other things.
And if your child is politically minded and is thinking about going into politics, but better way to have them start off than this. And if they're not politically minded and they're not going into politics, what better way to show them what the politicians that serve them are doing so that they can have a better understanding on how to manage them? Because that is our job as citizens, is to manage these elected representatives.
Amen. You're spot on, Stacy.
So what is there anything else you want to add? I want to cover the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. No, you're spot on. PatriotAcademy.com is the website you gave out, PatriotAcademy.com. You can go there, fill out an application, and, of course, another thing about this is it's not just anyone can go. You actually have to fill out an application and basically explain why you're qualified to go, or what reason you should want to go. And so it's a very good academy, PatriotAcademy.com. 5 or 6 regional academies across the country, and we're training up the next generation of leaders.
And I want to point out that, so Walker Wildmon went when he was a youth, and now look at him. Look what he's doing. So this is the way to kind of, that's your ringing endorsement right there. And I've met Walker Wildmon. If you're listening and you're not familiar with him, because he's in management, so he's behind the scenes. He's our puppet master, except when he comes onto the radio to fill in for us hosts. And you often appear on many of the programs here, so I'm sure people are familiar with you. But I just want to point out, this is the kind of training that we often will be sitting around drinking coffee with friends saying, I sure do wish we had, something. Well, we do. I didn't know about it until he just sent out the email. I was like, oh, I'm totally into this. I was looking at it on the internet, and my husband was like, what's that? I was like, potential summer camp for one or more of the kids. And he was like, oh, he just left. He walked right out of the office like, I'm sure you can handle it. I don't want to hear about it. I'm good. So this is what you're supposed to do. You find something good that fits in with the Christian worldview, and then, of course, present it to the kids. They have to apply. If they're accepted, then that's a good sign that they can get in there and take part. And so you go to PatriotAcademy.com, and I just encourage you, get in there. It says they had January 1st was like their super early bird rate, April 1st was early bird rate. Right now you're in the regular rate period, and then the last minute rate starts after May 15th for registration. So, think about it, look at it, consider the cost. So you might have a short drive, or you might need to fly your kid there, depends. But definitely put this on the list of things you're considering for the summer. It sounds like a great, fun program, educational, and they can meet some people.
Amen. And Stacy, I'll be at some of these academies. So I'll be over in Texas, and I'm thinking about going up to up to the Northeast to that academy, and I might go over to Florida. So those of your listeners who are thinking about sending their kids, their teenagers, their college students, I'll be at some of these academies. I'll be able to speak, and I'll be able to interact.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's an extra bonus, y'all. If you want eyeballs on the kids, you might reach out and
I'll
say,
keep an eye on them.
Walker, can you text me if you see my kid? And then he might text you a pic. You never know what he's going to do. He's going to be at some of these. So
that's right.
Well, Walker, thank you for coming on the show today and for sharing this. And I hope to continue to promote this, so parents who maybe didn't hear it this year, their kid is not the right age this year, next year they'll have a chance. So we can circle back around to this again, maybe at the end of the summer or maybe in the spring next year, to make sure people know.
Sure. Thanks, Stacy.
All right. Thanks, Walker. It's Walker Wildmon, AFA's VP of Operations. He was live to us from Studio H. And now we just have a minute left in this segment. One more time, it's patriotacademy.com if you're interested in checking it out. And I talked a little bit about Kay Cole James earlier. And I also want to talk a little bit about this top general. And there's an internal memo that's been leaked opposing President Trump's use of Pentagon funds for the border wall. So we remember when you saw the story that the Pentagon was planning on using, I believe it was like $1 billion. They're going to move money from defense to work on the border wall. And then the story broke that was happening, and then some Democrats moved to stop it. And I was wondering, how did they find out? Why would the news know about this? Because the news does not often announce when the Pentagon shifts funds from one line item to another. Have you noticed that? I mean, do we often see in the news a story about this line item of funding from this agency going from here to there? No, we don't. But you know that happens every minute of every day. I know this because my mom used to work for the federal government, and she was a budget analyst. And at her last position, she was managing base realignment and closure, a $4 billion account. And she was moving money around like nobody's business at the direction of the people who were in charge of the funding line. So why is this an issue? Because somebody leaked it. A highly improper and extremely controversial Marine Corps top commander, his name is Commandant of the Marine Corps General Robert Neller, leaked a pair of internal memos to NBC News and the Los Angeles Times, wanting to embarrass the president over shifting Pentagon funding to make sure he could build wall. This is the swamp at its worst and its best. And the president is there to stop it. And I'm not ashamed to say I want him to succeed at stopping these kinds of people from getting their stuff done. We got to stop that. All right, we'll be back with more after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
I'd always told the players that winning a Super Bowl wouldn't change their lives, but knowing the Lord would. So Lauren and I agreed that if we retired right after the Colts won the Super Bowl in 2007, we'd be reinforcing the wrong message.
Later that year, Tony wrote his first book, Quiet Strength, which turned out to reach even more people than we ever could have imagined. The letters Tony received from readers touched our hearts.
The book's success created a new platform that the Lord opened for me, and those letters showed me that there's more to life than football and trophies. It's about serving God and telling others about Jesus Christ.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
On the Hour of Intercession, we have guests on a regular basis, and sometimes our guests have titles like doctor or pastor, but sometimes they have no title at all.
Pastor Joseph Parker of the Hour of Intercession.
One powerful truth to recognize is that every believer has a testimony, and they can teach you something about prayer as they share their own personal prayer journey.
Listen weekday afternoons at 1 Central here on Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is House Call for Health, a new finding about how we navigate the world. Your brain doesn't work the same as a GPS. Think about being in a food store and they're handing out free samples. Now keep that in mind when I tell you about this study involving rats. Researchers at Stanford University School of Medicine found that when a rat wanders around a box and learns there is food in a certain specific location, the rat's brain rewires and it will remember that location as a place for something yummy. The study in the journal Science finds that human brains also rewire in response to free food or some other temptation. This tells researchers that when you're in that food store, you are more likely to remember the location of the free sample and head in that direction. But it also provides a possible explanation why people can become addicted to a substance or an activity. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health, I'm Joy Piazza, Fox News.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, we took the spices that we'd prepared and we went into the tomb. We found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When we went in, we didn't find the body of our Lord Jesus. Who took him? Where is he? Who took him?
Why do you look for the living among the dead?
Where's Jesus?
He's not here. He has risen.
Jesus was alive. He's alive.
Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, mocked, beaten, and then crucified on a cross for sinners like you and me. The Son of God was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from that grave. American Family Radio encourages you to rejoice in the glorious reality that our God is a living God.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I think it's clear these negotiations are really in the final stages. They're down to a handful of final issues. Those are tricky issues, but compromises can be reached on all of them. So I'm optimistic a deal can be reached. What do you do with the existing tariffs in place? Remember, we have tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese imports in place. China says take them all off. The U.S. says we want to keep at least part of them in place. So the negotiation will center around how much of those tariffs stay in place, or is China able to convince the United States to lift all of them and maybe snap back the tariffs if China doesn't live up to its obligations? So that's a key issue. The second issue has to deal with the whole enforcement mechanism. Right. And the United States wants to reserve its right to impose tariffs should it feel that China is not living up to its obligations. And moreover, it wants China to say, we won't counter-retaliate if you impose tariffs. That's a big issue as well. Number three, I put the whole issue of forced technology transfer. Remember, this is the issue that kind of launched these negotiations. China has, made some progress, I think, in addressing U.S. concerns, but it's a tricky issue, and it's hard to write rules that will really stop this practice.
So what I take from all of that, and she gave some fantastic detail, that was Wendy Cutler, former acting deputy U.S. trade rep, vice president of the Asia Society Policy Institute, and she explained the three big hurdles to finalizing a deal with China, and she covered that so well. The thing that you'll never hear her say, because obviously she's providing like the kind of news detail as opposed to opinion. She did provide some analysis, but no opinion, is that the tariffs are working. So it's not a long-term type of a fix. It's a short-term, kind of stick. It's the carrot or the stick. I entice you with the carrot or I hit you with the stick. The president's using both. He's got some things that he wants from China, like the designation of all derivatives and alternatives that are in the fentanyl family, the designation of those as controlled substances that are illegal to deal in China and in America and anywhere in between, that was something that the president wanted, that he got as a part of negotiating on all of this stuff, right? There are hundreds of pages of items that have already been negotiated and agreed upon between the president and the Chinese government. They have actually just recently said, I saw this in the news when I was reading this morning, that they admit that they have not been completely in the right on their forced technology transfers, intellectual property thefts, and et cetera, et cetera. Up until this point, they just felt like that was the lay of the land and that's the way they were doing business with us. And who's to say it's a problem if we're not complaining? Right? I mean, have you ever seen a deal like that? I know I have. I've seen deals where it's between two parties and one of the parties is clearly disadvantaged, but they're not saying anything about it. They don't seem hurt in the least that they're in a subordinate position. And the other side, the longer that goes on, the person who's in the superior position will come to see it as this is just the way we do this deal. And then if the person who's in the subordinate position begins to complain, they'll say, well, we've always done it this way. What's the problem? Why are you suddenly upset with this? And then if they explain, well, it suddenly occurs to me that I'm losing a lot of money, or I've been offered a better deal by someone else, then the other person has to decide, well, am I willing to lose this, or do I want to, sweeten the deal so that I can keep this person in the, in the partnership? That's what's happening between the president and China. And, again, this kind of analysis on what's happening between China and the United States should be just conversation de rigueur on all of the networks, because every American should understand this concept of renegotiating a current relationship, the deal that a person is in. And, if both parties are satisfied, then it seems like, hey, go forward, do it. Even if it's not an equal partnership, if both parties are satisfied and they have what they're looking for, it's fine. But the minute one party becomes dissatisfied, and in this case, the party I'm speaking of is the United States of America, taxpayers. Donald Trump was elected in part because he promised to stop letting America be raked over the coals and have our intellectual property stolen and, black market flooded with knockoffs of our products. He said he was going to stop that. He said he was going to balance out the trade deficit, and he's attempting to do so. This is something Americans should be getting from their news and information. And of course, if your home is here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, you are getting it. But if you're not, then this conversation is getting lost by the wayside, because we need to talk about the president's taxes. We need to talk about how, orange man bad, orange man mean tweets, that kind of crap. That's just garbage that we shouldn't ever have to engage in or be fed through our news media, because it's, if we're just talking about ad hominem attacks, aren't we all good at that anyway? We don't need the media to do it for us. All of us know how to do that in spades. That's the thing we're constantly fighting against, is attacking people for their looks or for their views or for things that really have nothing to do with the conversation. So it's just interesting. Also via the White House, Thursday's report on the labor market suggests that it's strong and businesses are reluctant to let workers go. This is spurring some of the fastest wage growth in the current business cycle. I repeat, remember when we had, and I liked her. She was a great interview. I don't remember her name, but she was an analyst for labor markets and, so an economist of sorts. And she said that wage growth was slow and she didn't expect it to pick up in 2019. Well, she wasn't right about that. And I'm happy to report that, because I think it's really good for us to have good wage growth. All right, let's go to Nefertiti in Georgia. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Hi, I've been listening really well to you. I need to say something that pretty much prefaces my entire feeling about any media. My father loved a song by Ray Stevens that's called Walk a Mile in My Shoes. And that was his way of saying, you know what? One side you may think is wrong, but take a walk in their shoes before you decide that they are wrong, because you might figure out that you're a lot better or you're a lot more like them than you're not. I've always been a person that has been in the middle. I know that my vote is generally courted by liberals and by conservatives. And I've always known that to some extent, neither side lies. You just don't tell the complete truth. And I can even talk about China, as you were talking about the trade deficit on our side. Well, you know, most favorite nation that was pretty much around the time or pretty much given during Reagan and into Bush's administration and carried on through Clinton's administration allowed for China to eat up close to a third of all of our mortgages. Not only that, is we are aware of the World Wide Web. There is no such thing as secure data. Your stuff is out there no matter what. So the only way you can secure your data basically is to basically have nothing to hide. When I was growing up, there was such thing as a private telephone number, and people had private telephone numbers. And my dad told me, you know what, the only people with private telephone numbers are those people that have something to hide. I just find it ironic and very disingenuous on liberal side and conservative side that you place enough information out there to make your point, but you don't tell enough information to make the other side's point either. I look at both CNN and I look at Fox. I look at MSNBC as much as I look at Newsmax and One American News. I listen to the Turbine as much as I listen to other radio stations on Sirius and on both sides. But I still find that no one really wants to tell the complete truth. They just want to tell the truth in order to persuade you to their side.
Okay, so Nefertiti, I have a couple questions, and thank you for your call and your comment. Do you feel the Bible is the complete truth?
I believe the Bible is the complete truth. I believe that the interpretation of such is not.
Okay, so do you feel that, because you said both political parties are have sold their soul to the devil, that's their comment from the call screener, and that neither side presents the entire truth. You say the Bible is true, but the interpretation is not. Have you looked at both party platforms, the current platforms from 2016, which was the last platform year, and compared the platforms to the Bible?
Yes. And
so did you find that one platform or the other was more like, well, no, I have to ask you questions because I allowed you to make your entire comment, and I appreciate your perspective, and I'm glad that you called because it's an important conversation to have. You've raised some interesting questions. Do you feel that one of the party platforms is more closely aligned to what God's word says about any number of issues, whether it's one issue in particular or all of them? Is one party platform or the other more like what God's word orders us as Christians to do?
No.
So you feel that the issue of abortion is not a biblical issue, or that God's word doesn't speak to that?
I believe that God's word speaks to a portion of abortion, but I don't believe that the right side or conservative portion of abortion is as influential as the left side is. Because I'll tell you, I don't know of any woman that goes skip to Maru and my darling down to the abortion clinic and says, hey, I want to have an abortion. Let's just do this.
Does God's word actually speak to, well, now wait a minute, Nefertiti. Nefertiti, does God's word speak to, Nefertiti, does God's word speak to whether or not people can, of course, I've placed the blame on men here before, but we can't overtalk each other. Nefertiti, let's go ahead and put her on hold for a second. I can't let you overtalk me, and I can't let you kind of preach on your perspective. You're welcome to do a podcast or do a live stream on YouTube if you'd like, but it's a back and forth. And the question that I ask you about abortion is usually the one where I can tell where a person is, and you're equivocating for abortion because you feel that when women have abortions, it's a difficult choice for them. Of course it's a difficult choice. And I have not ever said that people skip to the doodah to go have abortions. But God's word doesn't say, well, if the choice to sin is difficult for you, then I excuse the sin. And so, again, I do appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts and feelings, but the position that you've assumed in what you call the middle is actually a position in which you think you can validate and justify sin on one side or the other, because Republicans sin too. Republicans are humans and they make mistakes and they're fallible as well. But what you're saying is because Republicans make mistakes, you can excuse the sin of having abortion on demand in the Democratic Party platform, and that's where we part ways. So I can understand where you would want to question both sides. By all means, that is an intelligent thing to do. And your statements about listening to MSNBC and CNN and also, Fox News and One American News Now, that's to be respected. I do the same thing. I watch and look at as much media as I can, and I listen to the perspectives, and I read the writing of people on all sides. That's how I can bring it to you here on the show and report it. I do think it's insulting for you to insinuate that I'm here on this program presenting just enough information to bring people over to my side without presenting any counterpoint or what have you. That's not accurate. I don't have to convince people that the Word of God is true. I need only present what the Word of God says. I need only present the truth of any issue. The truth cuts through the lies and the marrow, and it cuts through. It's a divining rod. And God's Word is powerful, and the name of Jesus brings the harvest, not me. So I don't have to inch and pinch off of it. I can share whatever the Lord puts on my heart, and it will do its work. Jesus' word, his name doesn't return void. His word doesn't return void. I encourage you to examine yourself and figure out why you feel the need to defend the issue of abortion. And you're welcome to call back anytime you have some answers on that. Fantastic to have everyone on the show today. Thank you so much for being here and making your home at American Family Radio. Remember, those who want the next generation and who fight the hardest for them will be the ones to reap that harvest. The libs are out there working pretty hard, folks. Let's do our part. Until tomorrow, I'm Stacy Washington.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Being there is half the battle. 1milliondads.com exists to help Christian fathers to be present and intentional in the lives of their children. Our hope is to wake up the fearsome wonder that is the mighty man of